If you like looping or loop artists, or you're a loop artist yourself, or you're thinking about getting into looping, then welcome to my channel. My name is JP, and this is How Do You Loop? In these series of interviews, I dive into the minds of different loop artists from different genres around the world. We ask them, why do you loop? What do you use to loop? More importantly, how do you use that equipment? Now, one thing before we get started, you may have noticed I'm wearing a How Do You Loop t-shirt. This has been designed by yours truly, and we have the How Do You Loop logo and lots of loops on the back. It comes in a series of colors and you can pick yours up at teespring.com, but I'm gonna throw a discount code on the screen now so you can go and get a nice little discount on your loop t-shirt. Also available in a hoodie. Now, the person I'm kicking the season off with is an absolute legend. He is a multi-instrumentalist, born out of Australia and now living in Nashville, Tennessee, USA, performing everything from local pub gigs to live streaming online to even festivals with looping. His loop technique is really quick and the quality of his sound is at one of the highest calibers I've ever seen in a live looping performance. The artist I'm talking about today is Carl Wockner. I was able to grab Carl on one of his mornings off, as he's a pretty busy guy, and I was able to just about squeeze everything we talked about down to a half-hour point. Now, I have put chapters in the description box below, so if you want to get to the question that we asked him, then go right ahead. But I would advise, watch the whole thing and stay right to the end, because Carl has a special announcement for everyone. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Wockner is on our screen. Hey! How we doing, man?
Good, man. Just kicking along, having a nice little first coffee of the day. Feeling good.
Yeah,
up
first
for a
coffee
chat.
for you. 18th millionth cup of tea for me,
Yep.
as we are literally on different time zones. So thank you very much in your busy schedule to come and speak to me today regarding how do you loop. I first saw you obviously on YouTube, and your channel's been going about 9 years now. I first saw the Thinking Out Loud sexual healing video with the Boss RC300. Now, you've got loads of things, a mixture of covers, you've got your own stuff as well, and your covers seem to gravitate towards R&B songs, but your originals like Stereo and Flowers and the Fool's Gold one, there's kind of a pop soul vibe. Is that how you would be describing your music?
Yeah, absolutely. My roots and stuff that I like to listen to is very R&B-esque, but goes through country and probably like yourself too, like multi-genres. You know, you pick up lyrics from there and a snare drum sound from that, and so my originals have kind of ebbed and flowed over the years, and the earlier ones sort of started on a singer-songwriter level. And then, yeah, I think now they've boiled in with the newer stuff in kind of a bit of an R&B pop acoustic sort of flavor. Song to song keeps changing, but that's kind of the esque that I'm aiming for.
So I noticed, obviously, with a lot of different influences and all the songs and performances, the number one question, obviously, on this series of How Do You Loop is how, who, or what got you into looping?
Yeah, cool. So have you heard of Jarl Bernhoft at all? The Norwegian dude. Yeah. Man, he was the first guy I'd ever seen. It would have been, man, like when Come On Talk came out. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where he starts with, come on talk, baby, I will shut my stupid. And it was on the RC50, so which was the predecessor of the 300. So I first saw him do that cover, and I was like mind blown. Totally blew my mind. He had bass strings on his E and A string of a guitar. So he had the top two strings, or the fattest strings, were bass strings, and then the following four were the standard guitar strings. And so he played like, it was just kind of a root note thing, but he did the vocal thing and the guitar thing, and he looped, and I thought it was incredible. And it was super cool. And I never thought I would ever loop like that ever, like never in a million years. And because I was playing in bands, and I would do solo stuff, and I'd be the kind of one-man band thing, but with like a kick drum or a stomp box, and then like a lap steel and slide and all that sort of stuff. Like probably a year after that, my bass player got a Digitech Jam Man, the stereo. So it was like the Digitech version of the RC20 or the RC30, the Boss two-pedal looper. So I borrowed it for like 2 months because he wasn't using it. And I was like, this is cool. And at the time I was playing a lot of covers gigs, just dive bar covers gigs back in Australia. And I love them. I think they shape a lot of musicians when you have to play for a long period of time and you just kind of get all your chops and you're used to playing to the back of heads and that sort of thing. So for that reason, like I got the looper because I thought this is great. You know, if I'm playing a 4-hour gig to 4 people who are in this venue, you know, like I may as well enjoy myself. You know, I find it was a really handy tool when you're like gigging. You can loop a few chords, or you can loop a little percussion beat and kind of play along. And for me, it was a nice progression because I was doing the stomp box or the kick drum, which was the duh, 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 you know.
Yeah.
And I was annoyed being a musician that I consider myself good, like better than average, you know, like I've got a good voice and I can sing. And it was annoying that, like, at the time I'm like, nobody cares about my, you know, every musician goes through this, by the way, I'm certain, but every musician goes through they don't care about my ability. They just want to hear Sweet Home Alabama, or they just want to hear like the same beat. And it was just driving me crazy. So I doubled down on the loop. I didn't want to give the people what they want. Like I didn't want to give them that, like, oh yes, like the same songs and the same whatever. So I doubled down the, like, you know what, I'm going to cover Dave Matthews and I'm going to cover all of these songs that aren't the standard set list. But yeah, that's where I dived down the looping side of things. And I borrowed that pedal and I loved it so much that I bought a RC20 at the time. And that was kind of my main rig for a few years before I went to the RC300. And even when I went to the 300, I was still playing real gigs with the band, like for festivals and big touring shows and ticketed shows and stuff. And this was still back in Australia. And then if I was ever booked for a solo gig, then I would loop. Right. And so it was those two things. We moved to the US. So I'm in Nashville right now. We've been here for about 5 years. But when I first moved to the US, I was either playing with the band for like big shows, or I was doing a solo live looping thing. And when I moved over here, I noticed that most people don't loop, or it was just a really rare thing. Everybody had bands, everybody toured and had bands. And if you didn't have a band, it just means you didn't have enough money, or you didn't have a big enough fan base to afford a band. Yeah. So I thought, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to keep looping because nobody else is really doing it. And sonically, if I can get close to competing with what a band would put out, because you can never get all the way, but if you can get close, it's almost like playing a game of golf, losing by 2 strokes, but playing with 3 clubs instead of a full set of, you know, it's more impressive. I think this was the moment that I never thought I would ever be when I first got into Jarl Bernhoft. And I'm like, I'm a looper now, I guess. I don't know if there's a club to sign up for or what, but I should probably.
I don't know if there's a club, but I'm now going to like reference you as the Happy Gilmore of looping. Yes. You've had different loopers throughout the years, and for a while you had the Boss RC300. I get the sense that you did what I did, which was like lock yourself in a room and find out what every single control does. And then all of a sudden a video comes out and you're on the Headrush looper board. And walk me through the reason why you changed over.
For starters, I think the RC30, the 2-pedal looper board, is in touch with what like half the people looping would ever need. And then to satisfy another quarter of that, most people won't need any more than what the RC300 would have. And so I, for years, did, exactly what you said. And I think what everybody should do whenever they get a pedal is figure it out. Like, go and do some research and all that sort of stuff. But you have to spend time, whether you loop or not, just play guitar, you have to spend time trial and error and going, well, that didn't work, or let me mess this up. And then learn from my mistake of doing that. Or it turns out you couldn't plug that in that way because I just blew up a speaker or whatever it is. I feel like people need to go through that rite of passage. But for the looping, I boiled down the way that I used the RC300. There was no thing that I could step up in that wasn't in my style. Obviously, there's things like pre-recorded stuff, and there's MIDI controls, and there's all that sort of stuff, but that's not my wheelhouse personally. Is no pre-recorded stuff. It's all live. And that's how I like it. I don't like to record to a click or anything. I like to keep my internal metronome. So that's me. But the main thing that I wanted more than the RC3. I really want Boss to bring out an RC300 plus.
Are you basically saying that when they brought out the RC505, you went, that's cool, when's the floor pedal version coming? And it never materialized.
Yeah, I went,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the biggest limitations, or a couple of the biggest limitations for me for the RC300 was that it's a 16-bit MP3 out. Not the through signal, that's still analog or mostly analog, but once you've recorded the track and then it's coming out, and most of the time you'll never notice the difference between it unless you're running through studio monitors or a big stage PA. You'll barely notice the difference. If it's a normal PA system, it should sound almost the same. I'm thinking future for my rigs, as I always am, and at the moment I'm in a point in my career that I'll play some little gigs to like a couple hundred people. And half of the gig is a covers gig, and then the other half is an original gig. So I'm playing downtown Nashville to a couple of hundred people in a bar and having a great time. But then sometimes I'm playing a theater show that's a ticketed show for an original gig of mine to 100 people, but it's pin drop silent, and I'm talking and I'm getting the perfect audio of this. And then sometimes I get lucky enough to play in front of 10,000 people at like a festival or whatever it is. And in that case, I've got a front of house guy, a side of house guy, a lighting guy, and I've got everything dialed in. And I'm like, this is the business. This is where it's at.
That's it.
And so I need a rig that can deal with all of those things. And for me personally, the RC300 could deal with most of those things. But the festival one, I needed additional output routing and at a higher bit rate. And so the Head Rush gave... it's got 4 mono outputs. You could stereo mix it, so it's either two stereo outputs or 4 mono outputs. But the thing that my ears pricked up about was the headphone output could also be routable. Yeah. So what I currently do, I have my input signal of my mic and my guitar, and sometimes my MPC sample controller. That all comes out of track 1 and 2, stereo track 1 and 2. So that's in and out. And then track 3 and 4 is the sum of all of my loops. So track 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of my loop audio is coming out track 3 and 4. So I just have independent control of those two things. Yeah. And most of the time, most audio engineers are incredible, but when a looper is involved, it's not a band, it's not a soloist, it's not a DJ, it's none of those things, but it's all of those things. And so it's hard to unlearn or get somebody to unlearn something that they've always done when you plug an acoustic guitar in to say, don't do that. My point is I'm trying to keep my my inputs into the console simple. It's like I've got 2 stereo sends, or worst case, I've got 2 mono sends, gain them the exact same, fader exact same, everything exactly the same. Send me the same thing as what you're sending out in front of house. It couldn't be more simple. And so, but for my larger shows, my projected larger shows, I want to send my through signal out the headphone out, which is a stereo out. Yeah. And then I want to send track 1 out of output 1, track 2 out of output 2, 3, 3, 4, 4. So I've got each individual track is routed separately to the front house. And that gives the engineer a lot more flexibility as an actual adaptive live engineer, fading and working with the song, whereas they haven't got that control. But with that control, you need to have somebody controlling it. Otherwise, it's not. There's no.
Certainly in a big PA environment, like it's more difficult. And for my Head Rush, it's track 1. Sorry, output 1 is vocal, output 2 is guitar, and output 3 is the vocal loops, output 4 is the guitar loops. So I do it that way if I need a 4 out, or I can just change it, as you said, just a stereo out, or just 4 monos or 2 stereos. The routing flexibility, I when I picked mine up, I didn't even realize how much routing it could do. I just went, 4 tracks instead of 3. Great. So the next question for that then, I suppose that answering that question is all about flexibility. Have you found the perfect loop setup yet?
I'm not one to give perfect marks almost ever. No. Because I feel like if it's perfect marks, then there's zero room for improvement.
That's a nice answer. Yeah.
So a perfect 10 means it's never going to be better. So call me a hard ass, I guess. I don't know, but I've probably said this every time I've ever got a piece of equipment. This is it.
This is the one.
This is the one. This is I'm done after this, you know. And I'm sure everybody said that, loop station or no.
Yeah.
This new pedal board, it's the one. You know. And then until you get something that's way better, and you look back 6 months ago and you go, I can't believe I had that piece of crap when I got this now. And so I'm getting really close to it, even though I've got it. For anybody who's seen my board or my whole sort of rig in front of me, it's big.
I've seen the case. I've seen the case it goes in, so I know it's big.
If I don't use it, or if I'm not really getting the most out of it, it shouldn't be there. There should be something else that I could use for that and that, or whatever it is, as long as the tone is not sacrificed. I think I'm getting really close to everything, but the trouble is I use every single thing that's in front of me multiple times in almost every song. And so I think I'm getting really close to my perfect setup. And this is another reason I went to the Head Rush, is because there's firmware stuff. It's got a brain. Yeah.
When they brought out the firmware 2, I did a video on that about going from firmware 1 to firmware 2, and it's day and night. It was just,
I saw that video actually, and it's
absolutely
huge.
day and night. And it was just one of those things where it really gives you hope that within that time frame they were able to do so much, whereas then you go back to an RC300 and go, wow, that hasn't changed for 10 years. It's 2011 that came out. One thing I wanted to talk about with your Head Rush, your specific Head Rush
switches.
I
knew you were going to bring that up.
No, I was going to bring it up, but only briefly.
The cool thing about Head Rush as a company is this is a new board, so they're very awesome at listening to their consumers.
They are.
And they've been very upfront and very attentive in actually hearing what people need to say, which is incredible. My thing was, after a month, the same switches that I use mostly, which is record on track 1, start, stop, you know, those ones, they just started mishitting them, and I had to really
push them hard
on kind of thing. And for me, at the level that I play, and also for my own sake, I hate it when it's a fault of the switch. Yes, some of them are my fault, and I'll totally own that, because I've done it, and it's, you know, usually is funny.
I've pressed one button and the whole song stopped, and I've kind of gone, damn.
I've accidentally on the RC300, I've accidentally bumped the scroll wheel up and down, which just deleted my entire loop. And so I was in the middle of a bridge and I was about to pump it back on, and I'm like, well,
that's that gone.
Next song, man. You know, to me, it's a deal breaker if the foot switches fail. And annoyingly enough, to swap out the foot switches, that voids the warranty. You can't just do that and keep the warranty. But the pedal as it stood was a deal breaker for me to keep. I couldn't play gigs like that. So, and I'm handy. I've built stuff, and I'm no, stranger to a soldering iron or whatever. So I've done that stuff before. So I swapped out the switches, and in doing that, I made the back row the tall ones, and I was able to find some short stubby ones for the front row, which actually stopped my double hit on the effects.
This is all what you said before about the fact that Head Rush are listening, and I said that I've said that in previous videos. Their forum is fantastic, and it's also one of those things where they're kind of like totaling up, like, this is the top requested thing, let's look at that. So I like that, and I like the back and forth, because they don't just put out a firmware, they put out a firmware and then go, what do you think, guys? So I've got another question for you, if that's okay.
Yeah,
amazing.
I got time.
Cool, fantastic. So you've performed with loop pedals live on stage in a studio. You've done live streaming, of course, a lot more live streaming than you thought, because of obviously a certain thing that went around the world in 2020 and still here. And obviously you've used both your guitar and your vocals to create some arrangements. Now, I've noticed something that you do with your loop pedal that I haven't seen a lot of people do, where when everything's playing all at once with all loop pedal, that's the chorus, but then you kind of pull things back, and there's still a little bit of drums somewhere on every loop. So your arrangements are really, really interesting in that respect. My question is that something that you pre-plan out? Like, is it really, really controlled, or is it just I'll throw a little bit of a kick on number 3 and see what happens?
Both is the annoying answer, but I'll elaborate. So I'm glad you noticed that too. So what you were saying is you have your vocal on this track, your guitar on this track. There's
I'm not going to be. I'm going to be changing. I'm telling you that now.
Okay, right, cool. Well, that's good.
First of all, you're so quick. You go onto YouTube and you see videos where they're like 10 minutes long, and 4 minutes in they start singing. By 4 minutes, you finished your song.
People get bored. I get bored. I used to actually loop too quick, and it wasn't until I saw Ed Sheeran looping. He's the reason that people know what looping is, because up until that point, most people thought I was playing backing tracks.
Yeah.
And it was so good when he came out, because I'm like, like
what I do.
Yeah, that. So then they're like, okay. Yeah, I used to loop like vocal and guitar parts at the same time. This was when I was using the RC30. I have like 3 or 4 or 5 different default ways to approach each song. I don't know how this is how my brain's
it's great.
Go. So obviously you got the verse, and the verse is closed hi-hats. If you got a band, right? You got the verse, it's closed hi-hats, or it's a side stick or something. It's chill, but it's still got the beat. Yeah. And then it's got like 2 guitar parts in it, and then you got a breakdown, which is like a rock and roll lighter moment kind of thing, which is just got claps and a vocal or whatever. And then you got your chorus, and that's all in kind of thing. Everybody's playing, the keys are on and whatever. So I want all of those parts in my song because it's cool to do that. So I want to have all of those moments in my songs. And the trick of it though is when you're looping, obviously, if there's a long chord progression, or if there's very different progressions with the verse and the chorus and the bridge and all that sort of stuff, that's when it becomes difficult. But for me, I like to have 2 different percussion-y bits, and then not vocal, but a couple of different melodic, like chordal parts. Yeah. So on track, for me, what the number 1 default of the 5 default, generally track 1, I will have beatbox. Yeah. And a few guitar parts, and usually more of a strum kind of guitar part to go along with the beatbox. And in my head, the beatbox is like a downbeat side hit snare verse part, because it's not big enough. It's just enough that it's like you got a little bit of hats, a little bit of snare, and that's kind of what my beatbox is. Then track 2, I usually layer any vocal parts that I have, which comes in the chorus, and it kind of lifts everything up. I'll skip track 3 for now, but track 4 was what my track 3 used to be in my RC300, and that is the bass part and the drums. And the drums is when I like hit the kick. And so the cool thing about that is there's no hi-hat in track 4 because the hi-hat is in track 1. So I can take everything out except for the drums and bass, instead of the kick, snare, and bass, which is to me the second verse.
Right.
So after you hit a chorus, everything's out, but the intensity's still there.
Got you. Yeah.
Boom.
Everything's out.
You got the bass playing, and so to me, I can
bring it all back in for the end. It's like a massive crescendo, right?
Exactly that. Yeah. And so coming back to track 3 now. Track 3, which I never had until I got to my head rush, track 3 is now my wild card, which is awesome. Right. So I've added that 4th dimension of my song build to be like, when it's the second chorus or the double chorus out, and they go to open hi-hats instead of closed hi-hats, or there's somebody's got a tambourine going now. Yeah. Like, or there's a ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba, or something, or my favorite thing is like the Dr. Dre, like, two note keys, ging, 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 ging. So I'll put that stuff on track 3. And so on stereo, that's on track 3, I have my and then I do that harmony, and that's all that's on track 3.
Right, got you.
But it's cool because I can leave that out through the chorus, but then the second chorus or the third chorus, I can bring that in. Right. So I've got all of these layers that I can add for a little more dynamic or take away for less dynamic. The other variations of how I set up songs could be with no beatbox. Yeah. They could be with more of like not drums and bass, just drums on
Right.
that track, because the bass line keeps changing between these different components. So I'll put the bass on track 3. The first variation is what I use for most of my songs, but then the other ones, depending on the length of progression or what elements that I want to put in there.
Thank you for explaining that, because that is literally part of how do you loop, which is great. If you could give one piece of looping advice to someone who may be watching this and is just starting out looping, what would it be?
If I could only pick one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing.
This is good, because this is, I mean, there's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's a combo of two things. It's your internal metronome and not overdoing anything. The best thing about looping is you don't have to play everything. You don't have to play a fancy guitar part if you can play the first part of it really well and then the second part of it really well. That's totally cool. You can loop the first part of it and then add the next part of it. If you've got 16 guitar parts in that song, you can put them down one by one. It's no big deal. You don't have to play all the parts together and be Jimi Hendrix on the thing. So do that. What happens is it screws up your rhythm. Yeah. And this is a pet hate of mine in a band, in a looper, anybody recording anything ever. If there's a beat and it's here and something's rushing the beat, I'm skipping the song. I don't care how good it sounds. It's done. I'm over it. I hate it now. I can't get over it and done with it enough, because that just means you're not patient enough to sit in your own groove. And so, so having a consistent boom, boom, that's fine. Play a simple little da-da-da-da. Where I'm going with that is, in a band scenario, if you have a trio, each person has to play more. Each person has to be 2 persons worth. But if you have a 6-piece band, then if everybody's playing as much as they played if they were in a trio, now there's too much sound.
You're talking about a wall of sound, aren't you?
It's just a wall of sound. There's just everything's muddy and blending in. Whereas you'll notice on a 6-piece band or a 12-piece band, the guitarist might just go, get it. And that's it, because that's all it needs, because all the other instruments are in there. And so what the trouble is when people loop, most of the time they're looping because they want to take their solo show a little bit more or whatever, and they haven't experienced playing with a band or had that moment of, you know what, I need to play with the space in a song more than I need to add stuff in the song. So focus on the rhythm. So all boiled down again, focus on just having a good beat, like a good rhythm, and then focus on anything that you add in the song. Make sure the song needs that bit. If it doesn't need it, don't put it in. Like,
nice. Thank
and
you.
if you do put it in behind the beat, not in front of it.
Yeah. See, the thing is, I can see about sort of 50 pieces of advice like circling around your head, and I'm only saying one, just one. That's cool. So you can see Carl live online on his YouTube channel. And if you're lucky enough to live in Nashville, Tennessee, then you can check his gig page, which is carlwockner.com.au. Got that right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So Carl, you've got one more thing to talk to us about today. What is it?
Yes. So if anyone's familiar with TrueFire online guitar lessons, they're the largest guitar virtual school in the world. I have a looping course. I was down in Florida, filmed it. It's huge. It goes through, it's called Artistic Looping for Guitarists.
Wow.
So it starts, the course is for anybody. The course is from anybody who is learning to loop all the way up to an advanced looper who might want to revisit some things or might want to challenge themselves a little bit. But it's the bulk of the course is geared for somebody who's been looping for a little bit and wants to step it up. I use a few different loop stations on the course. Most of it is done on a 2-pedal looper, so it can be interpreted however. There's challenges throughout. And then the last part of the course is me using my entire rig, playing 6 full songs with 6 cameras on me. And after each song, I break down every single thing that I did in that song and why.
That's fabulous.
So at the end of the entire looping course, that's what it is. So I cannot wait for that to be out.
Sign me up. I am there. So that sounds really cool, because if you can learn a thing or two from Carl and you haven't been binge watching his, well, if you have been binge watching his YouTube channel and sitting there writing things down, unlike me, because that's kind of what I do. So it's like, oh, that's on track 1. Oh, that's on. Oh, we stopped that. Right, that's what I do. Congratulations, first of all, and good luck with the course. That sounds like it's going to be great.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I can't wait. I'm super
cool.
pumped.
Fantastic. So, Carl, thank you very much for seeing us today. And how do you loop?
Yeah, so good. I love the shirts too. I can't wait to get one. This is awesome.
That's cool. Wicked.
Awesome.
Right, well, listen, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to have some dinner. You're probably going to have some breakfast.
Thanks, mate.
Enjoy your day.
Enjoy your day. I'll catch you soon.
See you later. Whew, it's amazing what's in Carl's head. He's an absolute legend when it comes to sound and looping techniques. Now, a couple of things before I go. Don't forget to sign up to Carl's online looping course. I've had a sneak peek at it, and the content is fabulous. Also, don't forget to pick up your How Do You Loop t-shirt or hoodie. I'll put that discount code on the screen now. And it's gone. The link for picking up the t-shirt is in the description box below. As always, if you have found the content of this video useful, then please give it a thumbs up. It helps me, but it helps push this video out to other people who might want to watch it. And if you have enjoyed the first in the series of How Do You Loop, then subscribe to the channel. Click the bell, and then you'll know when the next video goes live. And do me a favor and go and subscribe to Carl's channel as well. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.